as you're doing your introductions. Okay. Okay. Jennifer, you are up on my screen first. If you wouldn't mind going first.
Okay, I've had all kinds of technical difficulties this evening, and so I know my screen's all over the place. It's probably driving you all nuts. I'm Jennifer Gilkerson, and my family owns Sunset Berry Farm in Monroe County, West Virginia, and we specialize in strawberries, but we also do watermelons and sunflowers and green beans. And I am interested in this group because we have done some farm to school sales, but we'd really like to do a lot more farm to school sales. And my favorite fruit is watermelon, so I guess that's what I would be. I don't know if I answered all the questions, but
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Watermelon's one of my favorites too. All right, next on my screen is Noelle.
Hi, I'm Noelle Mitchell. I work for WVU Extension as a health educator. And as part of the health educator position, I teach nutrition classes in the classrooms at the elementary schools, but I also am part of the school gardens. So I am looking for more concrete ways to work with kids in the garden. And if I had to be a fruit or vegetable, it would probably be a mushroom.
Awesome. Thanks, Noelle. Nice to meet you. All right, next up is Dylan.
Hi everyone. My name is Dylan Upperman. I'm actually a second year master's student in geography at West Virginia University. I work at the Center for Resilient Communities, where we basically pursue community-based projects kind of designed to build more just, equitable communities in the state. And I'm specifically in the Food System Transformation Lab. We have various like labs we call them, but they're just research areas. But I'm actually working on a farm to school project right now, basically kind of looking at a statewide level, barriers and opportunities for the program. And we kind of have looked at this in the past at a very like particular county level, but we're hoping to kind of expand that now into the statewide review of the program. And we're working to develop some sort of curriculum to use at these stakeholder meetings that we're hoping to hold next year relating to the farm to school program. Um, and yeah, so I'm kind of just interested basically in the state of the program and what is being done, what needs to be done, the connections that need to be made, all those things. I'm personally interested too in this idea of like pathways into the food system through educational initiatives like the farm to school program. And I'm actually hoping for my like research thesis, like academic stuff to develop some sort of curriculum to be implemented through the center relating to food systems education. So it's a little bit outside of the farm to school scope, but I like to still think of undergraduate students as youth. So it can kind of fall into that category as well. But yeah, that's about it. I'm looking forward to kind of learning more about everybody in the projects and all that good stuff. If I were to be a fruit or vegetable, probably a tomato. I've worked with tomatoes in the past, and they can be messy and unorganized, but I love a good tomato after all. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan. All right, Sherry, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sherry Mitchell. I work with the Department of Agriculture. I'm relatively new. I'm still in my first year with the Department of Ag as a planning coordinator. So I'm on the fun side of business ag development, not regulatory. I don't make or follow rules. So I'm your cheerleader, your therapist, like I'm the fun person. I'm not too familiar with farm to school yet, so I'm excited to learn more about the program. My background is in higher education, specifically in advising and leadership. And oh, my project, I was thinking of working with some college students, but we have a brand new farm crawl here in Morgantown where I'm located. Well, Mon and Marion counties. Um, so I'm thinking of doing something community based through that next summer. We'll see. If I were a fruit or vegetable, I think I would be a pineapple. I like to visit tropical climates. I can be sweet or a little prickly, depends, just kind of depends. But I do love a good hat, so probably pineapple.
That's an amazing answer. Thanks, Sherry. All right, up next we have Marlena. Oh, okay. At cheer practice. Oh, and Jackie's driving. Well, that's okay. Thank you guys for joining us from your different locations. Yeah, and thanks for typing out this introduction, Marlena. This is yeah, homeschooling, and I love Brussels sprouts as well. So next I gotta ask Jenny Totten, if you were a fruit or vegetable, which one would you be?
Probably a sweet potato. If you've ever grown them, they're kind of crazy on top and go everywhere and in every which direction and get tangled, which is my life in a nutshell. But then you end up with something really nice at the end and you get to dig it up and oh, surprise, it's edible. So that's good.
I love that answer. I was thinking about it earlier today. I think this time of year I'd be a butternut squash. Because I have butternut squash colored hair, and I'm very excited to make butternut squash soup. And I just feel like they're a great, sturdy vegetable. So, my answer, butternut squash. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing those introductions. And we wanted to take a little bit of time to do those because we're very excited to get to know you guys and get to know for you all to get to know each other. And we're really interested in designing this course so that it works the best for what you're interested in. And we sent out the syllabus with the topics that we're thinking about when it comes to the farm to school and the local food systems and designing a project. But if there are specific topics that aren't covered in that syllabus, but you're interested in hearing more about, please, shoot me an email anytime. And we will work on trying to get that incorporated into the next couple of months of the program. So we will dive back into the presentation and talking about what the program is. So what is Sprout School? So we feel so fortunate to be able to do Sprout School due to funding from the Northeast Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Professional Development Fund. That is a mouthful, Northeast SARE for short. And there are a couple of key pieces of Sprout School. We've got these virtual bi-weekly meetings like the one you're attending right now, where we'll meet every 2 weeks to discuss a variety of topics, and I'll share some of those topics in just a minute. Learning labs, will also go into those in just a minute, and youth garden support network gatherings like the one I mentioned earlier in Romney, where we'll try to pull folks together so that we can meet in person as it works. And I'm actually gonna put Jenny on the spot for just a minute, because these are the components of the program. But Jenny, can you give us a little bit of context as to why, when you were thinking about the design of this program, it's like we should have these elements of it as we're thinking about doing youth ag in West Virginia?
Yeah, so a lot of this came from a lot of failures. Like in all honesty, it came from a lot of I feel like Noah was probably around for some of these too, where it's like, oh, let's just put, if you build it, they will come, right? So 10 years ago, if you stick a school garden, they will not automatically know how to use it. And all kinds of other stuff, right? If you build an aggregation system, no matter how you build it, it will be useful. And that is not the case, right? And so what kind of, when I started at FGU, it was very much a like, let's take a long, hard look at all of the youth work that's happened and what's working and what's not working. And there were some things that were very much in common, where it was like, what happens if we look at stuff from like a community development framework instead of simply, let's build the school garden, or let's do the nutrition activity, or let's get the strawberries into the school system. And so the pieces that were successful that people could point to and say, we really, this is what's made us successful, were things like consistent engagement. So that's where every couple of weeks we're going to get together and we're going to share information. So consistent engagement to kind of increase knowledge around farm to school or around the system as we're building it. The learning labs, these are opportunities to show small success. And so it's not a large grant. People get scared when they hear, $10,000 and $15,000 projects. And so we're giving, $300 to $400 to do one small project to get success. And then you take that success and leverage it for future success. And the cool thing, I think every single one of our first cohort that has completed a project there's already plans, if not already things that have happened as a result of those first projects. And so I'm here to say $300 can make a difference. It's also not overwhelming, whereas $10,000 or $15,000 is often overwhelming in a classroom or in like an individual school sourcing setting or things like that. So start with a little bit and grow. One-on-one coaching. So that's Margaret, that's me, that's Casey. It may be somebody from outside of FGU, but within our system. There's a fantastic person sitting at Coalfield that we may draw in. There's a couple of really, really awesome child nutrition directors out there. So like we have people that we pull from that as your projects get developed, if you need one-on-one assistance, we'll hook them up with you. And newsflash, we're paying them too, right? They're not like volunteering their time, because we believe in paying people for the work they do. And then the ability to consistently come together just to see each other and share successes. And so way back in the day, there was this thing called the School and Youth Garden Support Network. What a mouthful. But what it did was 3 times a year, it met around the state and it pulled in everybody within that area that was doing something related to nutrition, education, youth gardening, farmers that were selling to the school system. And it just gave them a chance to get a little bit of technical knowledge. And so there was always 3 or 4 workshops associated with it. And then always a chance to network, and then always a chance to sit down and say, all right, here's the state of the system. How do we push the system forward? It was a brilliant thing that a bunch of AmeriCorps built. And then when the AmeriCorps left, you know what happened. And so our goal is to build this without the AmeriCorps involved. It's great if they show up. It's wonderful. I love AmeriCorps. I was one. Oh my gosh. But the consistent like thing should not rest on their responsibility or their shoulders. And so we're saying, what if a university houses it? And the cool part about this is like the Department of Ed is on board, and the Department of Ag is on board, and WVU is on board, and West Virginia State is on board. So it's now this like full push building of a system and a network that no longer rests on like 3 AmeriCorps that said, hey, this is a thing that needs to happen. But we're taking the lead on like the networking that happens around the state, and then once or twice a year there's going to be like big meetings around that Melinda from the Department of Ed coordinates. So pretty cool. Yeah, is that all you needed? Since you
Yeah, that's
Sweet.
wonderful. Thank
Sweet.
you. That's perfect. Yeah, I think that is a great explanation of why the program looks the way that it does, and why we have these different components to try to meet these Sprout School goals of showing what Central Appalachian ag production can look like and support folks interested in bringing ag activities into their classrooms and communities. So how are we going to do that? Like I said, meeting on a bi-weekly basis. So our next session, we'll talk about asset mapping, and it's a fancy community and economic development term that just says looking at what's working well in your community and seeing how to leverage it. And then as we go through, we'll get to talk to a child nutrition director, which will be awesome, and hear more about local sourcing in West Virginia schools. We'll walk through some different youth agriculture curricula that Jenny and I and fellow educators love. We'll do a session on how to manage youth gardens and how to get youth gardens started, and then thinking about some entrepreneurship connections with farm to school, just to name a few topics. So basically what I did is condense the syllabus into the next couple of slides. But if you guys have a question about a specific element of the syllabus that doesn't get covered in the next couple of slides, please ask, because yeah, we certainly don't want anybody to leave with any confusion. So those are the biweekly meetings. And then, as Jenny said, we'll also bring people together a couple of times a year. So these are photos from our youth gathering at our office in Franklin back in April. And Tona Trice, who's pictured in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, has really generously offered to help us host the next gathering in Romney in November. And this is her daughter, Ada, trying a snap pea. She was a fan. So at these gatherings, we'll do some hands-on activities and brainstorm on ways to support each other in doing local food and youth ag work in the West Virginia and the broader Central Appalachian region, and then eat some tasty, locally sourced food. That's an essential part of it as well. So we would love for you guys we'd love to see you all at the gathering in Romney in November, but we recognize that the state of West Virginia is big and things are very spread out. So we're going to try to have, gatherings in a bunch of different places so that they're accessible to folks coming from different areas of the state. Okay, and then a big piece of Sprout School is doing these learning labs. So there are 4 big ones. And as Jenny said, the learning labs are centered around different elements of community development, and we'll dive more deeply into those as we move throughout the program. So starting with, as I said earlier, asset mapping, building from success, what's already working and happening. And then from there, once you've identified those community assets, thinking about how to build a team to help then accomplish a project. And we are here to support you in every step along the way as you're brainstorming and implementing a youth ag project. And we're also here to hopefully provide lots of different ideas for future projects. So we'll go through a few of those in the presentation tonight, and then we are lucky to have a few former Sprout School participants who are going to come to our next Sprout School class and share examples of the projects that they worked on while they were in Sprout School to help you guys, get on ideas of what you want to do if you don't have an idea already. And these learning labs are sequenced throughout the whole program. So you've got like a month to multiple months to complete these. And they're really helpful to us. We're not grading you or evaluating you in any formal way, but the hope is that in the future, the West Virginia Department of Education will pick up Sprout School as a professional development opportunity for teachers and continue the funding of this program. So it's really helpful to have some written examples of projects that people have worked on. So that's the learning labs. Okay, before we dive into this, Jenny, anything else you want to say about the components of project?
I think the best way to describe the learning labs is it's a mini grant application pulled apart. So it's like you're going to do all of the pieces of a grant application. And when we say it doesn't have to be complicated, I think the longest one pieced all together last year was maybe 5 pages. So like we're not asking you to do like, we know what it's like. We do. So we do it all day long. So we're not asking you to also do it all day long with us.
Yeah, and no, and not even 5 pages,
Yeah.
and, like, a budget and pictures and all the things, yeah, and on the subject of project funds, I'm glad you mentioned that. There's, like, 3 as Jenny said, $300 to $400 to implement your project, and then there's a $200 participation stipend, for you all for participating in the program and doing a small project.
And if some of you, I know some of you are in roles where you have like multiple sites or you want to like be engaged with multiple sites, as you get into like building a project team, like talk to us, because if you end up with different project teams, that's essentially a separate project for each thing, which is okay if you can manage it. But you know, we don't want we don't want you trying to spread $300 amongst like 5 production sites or things like that. So we'll work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And another cool thing that came out of the first cohort of Sprout School is that some people chose to work together on projects and combine project funds. So if you have somebody else who's like, wow, I'd like to participate in Sprout School and do a project, that's awesome. Yeah, if you guys are working on similar topics or are close geographically, we love that collaboration. Okay. So we'll dive into the little bit of content portion of tonight's Sprout School session. So just a definition of farm to school, because it's a term that we've thrown around a lot already at the beginning of this call. And we just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page with what it is. It sounds like many of you have experience doing farm to school work already, which is awesome. But the definition of farm to school, which comes from the National Farm to School Network, is farm to school enriches the connection communities have with fresh, healthy food by changing food purchasing and education practices at schools and other education sites. So that's one piece of it, is the procurement and purchasing. And then another piece of it is education. That's a huge part of farm to school, is learning about local food systems and agriculture and getting school gardens going, just learning how to work with the assets that are in a community. As you guys will learn as we go through this program, I love a good graphic, and I think this one on the right shows how the merger between school gardens, procurement, and education, and those core elements of farm to school. Oh, yes, and also may include policy changes as well. The National Farm to School Network does a lot of awesome work on trying to, help other people across the country access, enhance their local food systems and access sourcing in schools. So farm to school can look like a bunch of different things, and we'll give some concrete examples along with that definition. So one of the things is entrepreneurship, and the example we have here is the McDowell County Pickle Project. And since we have an expert on the McDowell County Pickle Project with us on this call, I'll let her tell you a little bit more about that.
I accidentally said yes to a bunch of teenagers. That is the best description. I live prior to moving to Franklin, I lived in McDowell County for about a decade and had kind of basically built their school like garden program with the WVU nutrition director, blah, blah, blah. The person who is Noelle for McDowell County. That is the easiest way to describe it. So Dana and I basically built a thing from the ground up that continues today, which is really cool. But one year the kids looked at me and said, "Can we make pickles?" And I said, "Sure." And what started as like, we're learning to make pickles became this whole adventure through regulatory so we could sell the pickles. And then they accidentally became really successful and ended up in like 13 retail locations for 2 years. Those kids have all graduated. And so now there are pickles in like 2 retail locations, but it's okay. But I think the interesting thing is that core group of kids, all of them, they may not all like be college track, but the ones that were college track out of that are all in something ag related, which is really cool. There's an ag economics person, before her, there were a couple of biology folks that are like now teaching biology. And so they're teaching ag in the classroom and things like that. So pretty cool to see how career connections happened in an area where agriculture is like not a thing that's ever talked about. So pretty neat.
Yeah, absolutely. And this central photo comes from McDowell County as well. That's a school garden that Jenny helped get up and going. And then the picture on the right is Jenny's dog, Oliver, who participated in one of our Maple in the Classroom trainings last fall, where we made, know, and show sombreros. That's an activity from Junior Master Gardeners Learn, Go, Eat, Grow curriculum. And it's a great way to learn the different needs of plants. And you get to make a fun hat along the way. And then Ollie gets to wear the fun hat. So that's another great piece of farm to school is education. So some other pieces, marketing, I think, goes alongside entrepreneurship. And these are students from Wood County that grew a bunch of different delicious greens and then made this fantastic label to advertise their greens. And then the other piece of it is procurement. So we've got these delicious strawberries and corn, both sourced from West Virginia. And we pulled all of these photos from the West Virginia Farm to School Facebook page. They do an amazing job of highlighting farm to school efforts across the state of West Virginia. So if you aren't following them already, I would highly recommend checking them out because it's, yeah, whenever they post, it's a highlight for me to see the cool things that are going on around the state. Yeah, Jenny, do you want to share a little bit more about
Sure,
these?
although I'm going to pass the giant example off to the person who made the giant example happen with the huge team. No, she's shaking her head. Never mind. Okay, so Sunset Berry Farm. Basically, you heard that her favorite fruit was watermelon. She grew a ton of them with her team this year and then had to have a place for them to go. And I have kept up with Jennifer on Facebook for years and started noticing that watermelon were getting trucked to like literally, I think I saw 3 school systems so far, maybe 2, I'm not sure. But the funny thing was last week I was in Fayette County when the watermelon showed up in Fayette County, and so that was crazy. But the folks from she worked with the folks from Greenbrier Dairy, so to actually get everything into Fayette County schools, and then you get to see the lovely kids from Meadowbridge Elementary. I'm sorry, there's a Meadowbridge and a Meadowview and a Meadow. There's all kinds of meadows out there. But Meadowbridge Elementary actually enjoying their watermelon. And this is a big example. Okay, so this is a giant example. These are the examples that get told from all over the country, and these are the examples that overwhelm everybody. That's what I'm going to say. Because it's a lot of coordination and it takes a very experienced farmer and it takes a very open and welcoming child nutrition director, right? So it takes a lot of people being on the same page. And it takes years to get to that point. Okay. So, like, cool, awesome, wonderful example, warm and fuzzy. Love it, love it, love it. It means more money in farmers' hands. That's the end goal here with procurement. So, let's flip over to small scale examples. And so at the top, we've got Paul Ronk, who is a maple producer, literally went and did this literally went and did a maple tapping with a bunch of kids at Allen Creek Elementary. It was a like 5-hour endeavor one day. That's farm to school too. It's all farm to school. It's just what scale are you at, right? And so by doing the maple tapping demo and letting the kids tap the taps in and have all kinds of fun stuff, those kids are having an agriculture education experience. That's farm to school. The next slide over, that's a group of kids from McDowell County that we took all over the place on a field trip for basically 3 days to see examples of agriculture that were out there, as well as see careers in agriculture, as well as, oh my gosh, we went to the Capitol and they got to lobby for cottage food. So these guys, this is also farm to school because you're connecting kids to careers and you're connecting kids to policy. And so this is them in the lab, in one of the greenhouse labs at West Virginia State University, and getting to see what hydroponics looks like, getting to see what kinds of experiments get run. The cool thing is they were doing the exact same thing at their high tunnel at their high school, and so they got to have those conversations with the professors there. It's farm to school because you're connecting kids to agriculture and you're connecting them to careers in agriculture. The bottom is a couple of kids eating raw green beans, which is always an adventure. Handing kids raw vegetables and seeing which ones they eat is always an adventure, and it's a fun adventure. I did not expect the green beans to be the hit for raw vegetables, but we set up a youth farmers market at like they had like a soccer kickoff, and so we're like, well, we're going to set up a youth-based farmers market on the school grounds. And so we did that. The kids got their little tokens. They came up, they got their vegetables, they got to try whatever they picked out. Nobody was there to tell them, the parents weren't there to tell them they didn't like it. And then they got to go back and like whatever they picked, they could try. That's also farm to school, and that's a one-day endeavor. And so it doesn't have to be big. Like you can change the system one tiny step at a time until you get to the big example that everybody knows and loves. And so don't let it overwhelm you. Start small. Little stuff counts. Most of you are experienced with the small stuff though, that I've heard, but we have some other folks that'll be joining us that maybe this is their first time doing some stuff like this. But it's not, it doesn't have to be overwhelming, and it doesn't have to be this big, like coordinated effort. It can be a bunch of little things that eventually add up to a big thing.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I the language you use there from your school is connecting kids to agriculture. Boom. I think that's all it's got to be. Plain and simple. And yeah, agriculture is gardening and nutrition and yeah, sampling fun veggies. It's so much. So
It
thank you,
can be
Jen.
a classroom policy change. It can be a bunch of preschoolers say we eat strawberries on Fridays every day of the week. That's a policy change. That's farm to school. That's putting that's putting good nutrition in kids' hands. That's also potentially local sourcing if they're getting the strawberries locally. And so it doesn't have to be this big, huge thing. It can be one day. Do it. Yay. And then you do more days and you eventually get to a big thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and farm to school is working at enhancing local food systems, which is another term that we've already used on this call. So I just wanted to do a definition into what local food systems are. And in reading in 2010, the USDA released a report saying that it's really hard to get a shared definition of a local food system. So this definition comes from the University of Missouri's extension. And I like it because I think it captures my understanding of local food systems, which is economic interactions between food producers, food, social relationships, and environmental management centered on a particular practice. So, how can we bring the producers, the consumers, the communities, and together and think about the environment at the same time? And you can see those themes captured in this wheel on the left side of the slide. But this wheel makes it look like working in a local food system is a very linear process. And as it sounds like from your experience, many of you all can speak to, often it's not. And next week, in next Sprout School class, we'll have you guys actually map your local food system, and it'll probably be all over the place. And that's awesome. This graphic makes it look, I love a snappy graphic, as I said, but it makes it look a little more simple than it often is. So we wanted to, again, have an example of what a local food system looks like and several different groups working within a local food system. So this example comes from Wheeling in Ohio County, West Virginia. And in 2015, Wheeling participated in the program Local Foods, Local Places. And this is a program from the EPA that brings together different community leaders and community groups to think about how to build a better food system. So the groups that came together to think about this in Wheeling through the Local Foods, Local Places program were Grow Ohio Valley, the Wheeling National Heritage Area and Wheeling Reinvented. And they had a big day of brainstorming on how to keep working and making the local food system better. And Jenny will give an update on the results of that brainstorming.
Yeah. So I want to first explain local food, local places, because I think it is a branch of, it is not direct funding, it is technical assistance in most cases from the Environmental Protection Agency. So they don't hand you money, they hand you a facilitator, which is often what's needed to start these conversations. I think people often think, oh, we need $100,000. And the reality is you need a person that's willing to have hard conversations. And so basically the facilitator works with whoever shows up at the table, and Wheeling identified who needed to show up at the table to get together a local food system plan for the next 5 to 10 years. And so the cool part is Wheeling came out in 2016 with this plan. And if you were around in West Virginia at the time, you probably heard rumblings of Grow Ohio Valley and some things that they were doing with youth agriculture and like reclaiming urban blighted lands, etc. But there wasn't like a contained effort. It was a lot of like, oh, we're beautifying Wheeling. And by the way, we're growing some cherry tomatoes at the same time, which is how most community development starts. It's like, oh, I identified a need and I'm going to do the thing. And then local food, local places came in and said, all right, how do we use that? How do we use this, like the Wheeling National Heritage Area? How do we use some of the small, like angel funds that are happening in Wheeling? You know, how do we tie all of this together so that you get a sustainable food system? And so it's basically exploded in the Northern Panhandle. That's my easiest way to describe it. First and foremost, one of the AmeriCorps, Casey Ganser, switched over to the Department of Ag and has Sherry's job for that part of the state. So now there's a person who is simply like cheerleading and coaching and and very knowledgeable. She's a producer herself, and so very knowledgeable about agriculture. And so you have this person who's cheerleading the system along. She's not on my bullets here, but she's very integral to the system and to the success of that area. Grow Ohio Valley's basically become the lead anchor organization up there, and none of this was without hiccups. That's what I will say. But I'm here to share like the fun, good stuff, right? If we share enough of the fun, good stuff, then it'll all be good. So they became a lead anchor organization in local food development, really in the region. They've pulled down a lot of federal funding to basically build infrastructure and to get a lot of things started. And grants neither here nor there, but they're doing it. They're doing it. So let's let them do it. Grow Ohio Valley operates many youth education and outreach programs. I counted the other day. I think they're up to 12, which is wild for me to think about. And they just keep going. And they started with this framework of what if we helped kids heal their trauma through agriculture? And now it's turned into there's an entire like flower division where they're growing flowers and selling them. There's an entire like value added division where they're making like 2 value added products. And so it really grew out of youth agriculture. Then they also have the public market, which is an indoor farmers market in downtown Wheeling. It's a beautiful space. They tried to locally source everything and then quickly learned to get people in the door, we need to have consistent product. And so they locally source first and then go to the next layer. And so I think that's a really good move for a store that's trying to operate as a true grocery store and not necessarily as a farmer's market. They do leadership development and entrepreneurship programs. They're coaching other producers, the people that are selling into or that are commissioning into the public market. They're working with them to do production planning. They're working with them to pull out their enterprise budgets and really working with them to identify other market outlets, which I think is really neat. They've got an aggregation facility, small urban orchard. They've got a full-on backyard gardeners program, which is for food security. And a lot of those backyard gardeners are in year 3. And so now they're selling small amounts into the market. And so they're really, really cheerleading all aspects of the food system forward in one municipality, which is what you need. It's rare to find an organization that is like taking that on and just stays the lane and stays the course in their one space. And so they're doing a really awesome job of that. As a result of all of this local food being available, a couple of like local restaurants have begun to source local. And so Matt Welsh, who owns the Vagabond Kitchen, first of all, he came home. He came back to Wheeling to open a restaurant. And then he said, "Oh, what if I source local? Is that a different vibe?" And so his entire culture has shifted because of that. Matt himself has been able to grow into some different roles. So he's the executive chef for the state park system. And he goes around and coaches state parks on developing out menus and sourcing local and what that looks like and what contracts look like and all sorts of fun stuff. He's also leading the WV Cooks effort, which is a collective of West Virginia based chefs and cooks that are committed to sourcing local for everything that they do. And that doesn't mean every ingredient is local, but that means that everything they do has a component that is local. And it's a really neat way to look at how this one little planning grant essentially, so this one little, like, we're gonna facilitate a conversation, has turned into all of this in the last 10 years. It's also a really good illustration of some stuff isn't gonna work. I mean, that plan had 22 different components with 10 different leaders on it, and now there's maybe 5 anchor groups and, like, maybe 10 or so people that are involved all the time. That doesn't mean the others aren't involved, but it means that, the cream rose to the top, and these are the folks that are deeply engaged, and then the other folks are engaged when they can be. Um, and so it's really neat to think, this is how this process is working. This is also a 10-year process. A lot of you, I think Fayette County is about in year 3 of something similar to this, just based on the amount of money I've seen go to Fayette County in the last 2 years. Um, Across the board. That's not just like the school system, that's across the board. Cabell County is in about the same scale as Wheeling is as far as food development. Kanawha County is behind. You would think that the capital city would be ahead, but Kanawha County is far behind both Cabell and Ohio County. And so you see pockets of success and you see people that are like along the spectrum. And so like I think Ohio County is just a really good example of, like, if a bunch of people get stubborn enough and just stay the course, this is what can happen. And so it's been really awesome to watch, even though I've not been, like, directly involved, right? I know them, I'm friends with them, I help TA them, but I've never lived in Wheeling, I've never been a part of that system, but it's one of the coolest things I think that I've seen happen in the state in a while.
Yeah. I think the work that's going on in Wheeling is tremendous. And yeah, that's just a hope of the program is that we can shine a light on cool work going on across the state of West Virginia. So as you all see examples of great farm to school things going on, please send them our way. And yeah, we're so glad you guys want to be a part of farm school local food efforts. And I just wanted to say again, as Jenny has said many times, being a part of the local food system can be these amazing big systems, but it starts with buying local foods, growing your own garden, volunteering, implementing youth ag projects like we're doing here. There are so many ways to be a part of it, and we are excited to help you guys keep brainstorming about those as we move through this course. So we are getting really close to 8 o'clock. But before we stop for the evening, just wanted to see if anybody has any questions about Sprout School, the syllabus, farm to school, anything. And you're welcome to, either unmute yourself and ask your question or just put it in the chat. Well, if you guys are wanting to type a question, go for it. And in the meantime, we will jump into some announcements. So this is our first week of Sprout School. It's not too late to sign up. We would love for more folks to join us. And if you know of other people who might be interested, we're gonna record. We are recording tonight's session, and we'll send you all a link to that recording that you're welcome to share with other people. We'll share it with some people who are interested in being part of the program but weren't able to make it tonight. And yeah, we would love to have other people join us. As we've said a couple times in this presentation, our next Sprout School gathering will occur on Saturday, November 9th. We'd love to see you there. And thank you all so much for coming. Next time, we will get started on asset mapping and see some examples of Sprout School projects from former Sprout School participants. Okay. And that's all that we've got. Thank you guys so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye.